Hello and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. The National Assembly has elected 11 of its 18 standing committee chairs without support from the opposition. The ruling Democratic Party, which holds a parliamentary majority, nominated the chairs on its own after the opposition People Power Party boycotted the vote. Starting today, the Korean government is lifting its emergency vehicle restrictions as concerns over global energy supplies ease. This means the alternate day driving system for public institutions and the 5-day parking restrictions at public parking lots will no longer be in effect. In Venezuela, the death toll has climbed to 1,943 following last week's devastating earthquakes, with more than 10,000 people injured and tens of thousands displaced. As rescue efforts continue, a 3-year-old boy was pulled alive from the rubble 6 days after the quake, in a rare moment of hope. We begin this morning at Korea's National Assembly, where political tensions are escalating as the ruling party pushed through the appointment of key committee chairs without opposition support. Our Muniran starts us off.
The National Assembly elected 11 of its 18 standing committee chairs without opposition support on Tuesday, after talks on dividing the panels between the ruling Democratic Party and the main opposition People Power Party collapsed for good. The DP, which holds a parliamentary majority, nominated all 11 chairs alone as the PPP boycotted the vote. The biggest sticking point remained the chairmanship of the Legislation and Judiciary Committee, which reviews all bills before a final parliamentary vote, giving its chair significant influence over the legislative process. Under a long-standing convention, the post has long often been held by the main opposition. The DP retained control of the committee, reinstalling four-term lawmaker Seong-sook, who had served as interim chair at the end of the Assembly's first half. It also took the chairs of several key economic committees, including the National Policy Committee and the Finance, Economy, Planning and Budget Committee. DP floor leader Han Seong-sook said the PPP had refused to compromise.
We can no longer wait for the People Power Party, which refuses to negotiate, won't submit its list of nominees, and ignores the National Assembly Act by insisting on the Legislation and Judiciary Committee.
The PPP staged protests inside the National Assembly and declared it would refuse to participate in the 11 committees that were formed, warning it could also reject the remaining 7 committee chairmanships left vacant for the opposition. PPP floor leader Chung Jung-sik accused the DP of bowing to political pressure.
This reappointment is nothing but capitulation to a royal command demanding passage of the bill to cancel the indictment.
Separately, a parliamentary committee on Tuesday adopted a confirmation report for Prime Minister nominee Han Seong-sook in a session boycotted by the PPP, clearing the way for a floor vote. With its 161 of 300 seats, the DP later confirmed Han as Prime Minister. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
So as we just heard, former Minister of SMEs and Startups Han Seong-sook officially begins her term as Korea's new Prime Minister today. President Lee Jae-myung approved her appointment on Tuesday night after the National Assembly voted to confirm her nomination. Han is the second Prime Minister under the Lee administration and only the second woman to serve in the role in Korea. Her predecessor Kim Min-seok officially steps down following a farewell ceremony this morning. Kim is expected to run in the ruling Democratic Party's leadership race. After unveiling major investment pledges on AI and chips on Monday, President Lee Jae-myung headed down to the country's southwest to go into further detail. He vowed to take the helm in implementing the investment pledges in the region. Our Blue House correspondent Yoon Jung-min reports.
President Lee Jae-myung, who was out in the field in the southwestern city of Gwangju on Tuesday, following the unveiling of major corporate investment pledges, yet again vowed to take matters into his own hands to nurture the country's southwest into an AI powerhouse.
제가 직접 관할해서 집행을, 기획을, 총 책임을 또 최종 책임을 확실히 지겠습니다. 이게 그냥 정치인들이 하는 정책쇼 보여주기가 아니고 진짜구나 꼭 보여드리고 싶어요.
The president highlighted the energy resources in the region, such as wind and solar power, apparently with criticism by the opposition in mind over the region being selected as the site for investment.
관련해서 여러 가지 반론들, 이견들이 있는데 분명한 건 그렇습니다. 이게 경제적 그 원리에 따른 것이라는 겁니다. 용수, 전력, 용지, 이 인프라 이거 포함해서 호남 지역, 특히 광주, 전남 지역이 이 문제들을 해결할 수 있는 유일한 지역이 됐습니다.
He added that there was no coercion in seeking corporate investments. He vowed to boost housing and infrastructure for the area, where Gwangju and its neighboring Jeollanam-do province have been integrated. As a follow-up to Monday's announcement of the so-called mega projects, SK promised an investment worth 470 trillion won and Samsung 425 trillion won in the southwest to meet a surging chip demand.
We will deal with the global demand for memory chips by establishing a production cluster in the southwest.
We plan to make Gwangju a global semiconductor base by making an investment in new main fabs.
Amkor Technology Korea, based in Gwangju, will also expand its advanced packaging line in the city. He dismissed criticism over discrimination against other regions, saying that the Southwest has long been rolled out in the course of development.
지금 요 사안 자체만 보면 호남 지역에 투자가 조금 많은 게 사실이긴 하죠. 그러나 역사적으로 누적된 투자량을 비교한다면 그야말로 조족지열에 불과하다.
The opposition party has accused the president of favoring the ruling party's stronghold of the Southwest and politicizing chip investment ahead of its party leadership race. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
South Korea has lifted its emergency vehicle restrictions that were introduced during the Iran war as concerns over global energy supplies ease. The Ministry of Climate, Energy and Environment said Tuesday that the alternate day driving system for public institutions and the 5-day parking restrictions at public parking lots will be lifted starting at midnight Wednesday. The move comes after the government lowered the national energy security crisis alert level from alert to caution, following improvements in global crude oil supply chains after the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. The ministry estimates the temporary restrictions helped save about 160,000 barrels of oil per month during the height of the energy crisis. U.S. envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner are in Doha, Qatar, to discuss U.S.-Iran negotiations, but no direct meeting with Iranian officials is expected. Iran said Tuesday that no high-level talks are scheduled with the U.S. delegation, despite the envoy's visit following hostilities last weekend. Iranian officials said both sides must first finalize the terms of a ceasefire agreed to 2 weeks ago before addressing more contentious issues, including possible limits on Iran's nuclear program. According to Qatar's foreign ministry, the country's prime minister affirmed that mediation efforts would continue. He also met with Witkoff and Kushner during their visit. And now, for more on this, we're joined today by Dr. Baek Seung-hoon, researcher at the Institute of Middle East Studies. Dr. Baek, thanks for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So confusion has been, mounting over the next round of talks between the United States and Iran, with Trump saying Iran has requested a meeting, but Iran says it won't meet with U.S. officials. What do these conflicting messages from both sides tell us about the state of the peace talks?
I'm sorry. So simplest way to put it is that channel remains open, but the diplomatic process has not yet become a stable negotiation. So I think the first point is that the two statements are not necessarily completely contradictory of both sides, because President Trump appears to be using the term meeting rather broadly. So from Washington's perspective, the presence of American envoys, Iranian representatives and Qatari mediators in Doha can be presented as a resumption of negotiation. But Iran is making a much narrow distinction. Tehran is saying that no direct high-level meeting with American official has been scheduled. So what we appear to have at the moment is indirect or shuttle diplomacy. So American envoys are consulting with Qatar. Iranian officials are holding separate discussion with the Qatari side, and message may be exchanged through the mediator. So there may also be lower level technical discussion concerning the implementation of the memorandum, frozen Iranian assets and maritime arrangements. So the conflicting message therefore tells us that diplomacy is still alive, but that the peace process remains a bit fragile and poorly institutionalized yet. So the two sides are have not even reached a common understanding regarding the format, level, and agendas of the next round of negotiation. So there is also a domestic political dimension into it. So President Trump wants to show that his pressure that brought Iran back to the negotiating table and that he remains in control of whole this process. But Iran, by contrast, does not want to appear to have requested negotiation immediately after American military strike. So Tehran needs to demonstrate to its own public and political establishment that it is negotiating from a position of sovereignty rather than weakness. So I would describe the current situation as negotiation about the condition for negotiation. This is not yet evidence that diplomacy has collapsed, but it is a warning that the two sides remain far apart from over-sequencing, implementation, and political presentation.
I see. That's very good to hear. And these two countries have reportedly agreed to halt the talks. Is it fair to say this conflict is showing signs of de-escalation, or does the risk of renewed fighting remain very high?
I mean, there are certainly signs of tactical de-escalation. So the two sides have stopped the immediate cycle of strikes and counterstrikes. So diplomatic contracts through Qatar has resumed, and some commercial traffic has returned to the Strait of Hormuz. So financial and energy market have also reacted positively to the announcement that both sides would stand down. However, this sounds not be confused with strategic de-escalation. So the underlying dispute remain unresolved. Washington and Tehran have different interpretation of ceasefire agreement, particularly regarding freedom of navigation in Strait of Hormuz, Iran's authority over maritime traffic, and sequencing of American economic concessions. So the nuclear issue has barely begun to be addressed, while the Lebanon front remained highly unstable. So the ceasefire also lacks strong enforcement mechanism. So there is no fully developed joint mechanism for investigating incident, identifying responsibilities, and preventing an isolated attack from triggering another round of retaliation. So this is particularly dangerous in a crowded maritime environment where drones, missiles, naval vessels, and commercial ships are operating in close proximity. So my assessment is therefore that we are seeing operational de-escalation without strategic reconciliation. So both sides currently want to avoid a return to full-scale war because the cost would be enormous. But the conflict has not been politically resolved. That is the current situation that I could at best describe.
I see. And earlier talks in Switzerland focused on Iran's nuclear program, and they will address this issue in their next round of talks. But the negotiations now appear to have sort of shifted toward resolving issues surrounding the Strait of Hormuz. What leverage does each side still have, and how do you expect these talks to unfold?
So, I mean, the shift toward the Strait of Hormuz reflects the urgency of the maritime issues. The nuclear question is strategically more important in the long term, but it requires a highly complicated technical negotiation on enrichment levels, uranium stockpile, numbers of centrifuge, inspection procedures, and sanction relief. So, but the Strait of Hormuz, by contrast, creates an immediate economic cost every day that shipping remains uncertain. So, as we have witnessed, Iran's most important leverage comes from its geographical advantage. Tehran cannot defeat the United States in the conventional naval conflict, but it does not need competitive naval forces to close the Strait of Hormuz completely. So, limited attacks, vessel sieges, inspection delays, mines, drones, and threat against commercial shipping can increase insurance premiums, freight costs, and global energy prices. So Iran has therefore demonstrated that uncertainty itself is a strategic weapon, their bargaining chip. So even a limited disruption can place political pressure on Washington and on energy important countries. So Iran also retained leverage through its nuclear knowledge and enriched uranium stockpile. Military strike may damage facilities, their nuclear facilities and nuclear capability, but they cannot eliminate technical expertise. So Iran can also influence other regional front, especially Lebanon, through its relationship with Hezbollah. So Iran has this kind of like leverage against United States. Strait of Hormuz, nuclear capabilities, and capabilities of utilizing proxies. But United States, however, also possesses several powerful forms of leverage. First, it retains overwhelming military and naval superiority. It can escort ships, strike Iranian naval infrastructures, and support alternative navigation route through water close to Oman. This was the cause of this conflict. And second, Washington controls access to sanction relief, frozen assets, international banking, and Iran's return to global oil market, because Iran oil has been sanctioned for like long period of time. So these economic incentives are essential to Iranian post-war recovery. So this could be a good bargaining chip and leverage for United States. Third, the United States has influence over Israel and the Gulf states. Although that influence is not unlimited, Iran wants Washington to restrain further Israel military action and to facilitate an arrangement in Lebanon. So the likely outcome is not a complete victory for each side. So this whole process the negotiation will probably process in stage. So the first stage will concern basic implementation, like safe shipping routes, communication hotline, procedures of approaching civilian vessels, and mechanism for investigating incident if something happened. The second stage will involve the political and legal question of whether Iran and Oman may charge fees for actual maritime services on Strait of Hormuz. And third stage will link maritime compliances to the phased release of Iranian asset and sanction relief. Only after a workable arrangement on Hormuz is reached are the parties likely to return seriously to the nuclear files and nuclear negotiation.
Right. I guess we'll have to see how the meeting plays out in Qatar. All right, Dr. Beck, thank you so much for coming on today. We appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you for having me.
Rescue teams in Venezuela continue searching through collapsed buildings day and night following last week's devastating earthquakes, as many still remain missing, while international communities scale up assistance for devastated families. Our Cho Young-eun has the story.
In a rare moment of hope, a 3-year-old boy, Kleber Moran, was pulled alive from the rubble in a hard-hit coastal state of La Guaira early Tuesday. He was the only survivor reportedly found on the 6th day of rescue operations and was taken to a hospital for treatment. The dramatic rescue came as the death toll climbed to 1,943, with more than 10,000 people injured and tens of thousands displaced.
It will be the 6th day since the 2 earthquakes struck, and all national and international relief teams are actively engaged in rescue efforts and action to assess and address the consequences of these earthquakes. We must continue the relentless search for survivors.
Meanwhile, humanitarian conditions continue to deteriorate, leaving survivors with little or nothing to eat. Thousands are living in tents or overcrowded emergency shelters, raising concerns over sanitation, disease, and access to basic services. UN officials warn that food shortages are worsening in La Guaira, where essential services have largely collapsed.
In La Guaira, the hardest hit state, food shortages are widespread, basic services have broken down, and connectivity has been largely severed. Community tensions are rising as access to assistance remains constrained.
The World Food Programme said more than 3,000 metric tons of food are ready in the country for the most urgent priorities. It has appealed for $50 million to provide emergency food assistance to 500,000 people over the next 3 months, adding that it could expand support to 1 million people if additional funding becomes available. On Tuesday, a 47-ton shipment of UNICEF humanitarian supplies arrived in Venezuela, carrying emergency medical kits, maternal and newborn care supplies, and disease prevention equipment. 조영은, Arirang News.
The U.S. Supreme Court has handed President Donald Trump a major defeat, rejecting his effort to limit birthright citizenship for children born in the United States to non-citizen parents. The ruling preserves a constitutional right that has stood for more than a century and marks the second time this year that the nation's highest court has struck down a major Trump policy initiative. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
The U.S. Supreme Court has rejected President Donald Trump's effort to end birthright citizenship for certain children born in the United States. In a 6-3 ruling on Tuesday, the court upheld lower court decisions blocking Trump's executive order that sought to deny automatic citizenship to babies born in the U.S. if neither parent was an American citizen nor a lawful permanent resident, also known as a green card holder. The decision marks the second major defeat for Trump at the Supreme Court this year, following the court's February ruling striking down his global tariff plan. At the center of the case is the citizenship clause of the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which states that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to its jurisdiction are American citizens. The Trump administration argued that the phrase "subject to the jurisdiction thereof" should exclude children born to undocumented immigrants and to parents living in the country temporarily on student or work visas. However, Chief Justice John Roberts said the court saw no reason to depart from more than a century of legal precedent. Roberts pointed to the landmark 1898 Supreme Court case United States v. Wong Kim Ark, which established that children born on American soil are citizens regardless of their parents' nationality, with only narrow exceptions such as children of foreign diplomats. He wrote that there was little evidence supporting what he called the administration's dramatically revisionist interpretation of the Constitution. Legal experts had warned that Trump's order could have affected the status of as many as 250,000 babies born each year, and could have forced millions of families to prove the citizenship status of their children. President Trump brushed aside the defeat, saying he still hopes Congress can pass legislation containing similar provisions, though such a measure faces long odds in the current Congress. The case appeared to be particularly important to Trump. In April, he attended Supreme Court oral arguments on the issue, becoming the first sitting U.S. president ever to personally attend arguments before the nation's highest court. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Choo Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. In Pakistan, a roof collapse at an after-school tutoring center on Tuesday has killed 14 children. A 30-year-old teacher was also pulled from the rubble. Most of the victims were under 9, with the youngest age 5. Officials said the center in the city of Lahore was operating without a registration inside a privately owned home that had a crumbling roof. A relative of one victim told reporters the roof had been in poor shape, with heavy materials piled on top. 2 people have been detained in the initial inquiry. Provincial authorities have ordered a survey of unsafe buildings ahead of the monsoon season and tighter rules for unregistered facilities. In Ghana, at least 13 people have died in flooding across the country's capital, Accra, after torrential rain submerged homes and vehicles. Rescue teams from the police, military, and fire service have pulled more than 470 people to safety. The flooding triggered a major fire at a rubber factory and forced authorities to cut power to parts of the city to protect equipment. Ghana's President John Mahama said about 140 millimeters of rain fell on Accra, far above the 56 millimeters that was the heaviest single-day total last year, and pointed to climate change. He also ordered the demolition of illegal structures built on waterways that worsened the flooding. The European Union has begun charging a flat €3 customs duty on low-value parcels from July 1st, closing a loophole that let Chinese platforms like Shein, Temu and AliExpress flood Europe with cheap goods. Packages worth under 150 euros had been able to enter the bloc without customs charges, letting foreign sellers undercut European retailers. The EU receives more than 2 billion such parcels a year. American basketball superstar LeBron James has told the Los Angeles Lakers on Tuesday that he will continue his NBA career with another team. James, now aged 41, spent the past 8 seasons with the Lakers and led them to the 2020 championship. Reports suggest the Golden State Warriors are preparing a strong push to sign him. James just completed a record-setting 23rd NBA season, averaging 20.9 points, 7.2 assists, and 6.1 rebounds.
Korea's rainy season has finally arrived. This year's monsoon made it the third and latest start since official weather observation began. But it's making quite an entrance, bringing heavy rain right from the start to southern regions. Mountainous areas of Jeju could see up to 120 millimeters. Most of the southern provinces could get up to 40 millimeters. Central Korea will remain sweltering with heavy passing rain. The capital area could see 5 to 60 millimeters, along with thunderstorms. And this afternoon's high gets up to 33 degrees. Daegu, Gwangju makes it to 26 degrees Celsius.
Now that's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.